Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to take really compelling source material and distill it down into some genuine insight for you.
And today's topic is quite something.
It really is. We're talking about this incredible moment in Hollywood history, a real what-if that almost changed everything for one of the biggest stars on the planet.
Yeah, it's a story that kind of exposes the machinery behind fame, how identity gets shaped or sometimes nearly erased right at the start.
Exactly. And this comes straight from Leonardo DiCaprio himself. He shared this recently, and it's a bit of a bombshell, really, that when he was just starting out, he was told his name. His actual birth name was basically unusable for the industry.
That's right. He was super young, maybe 12 or 13, just getting serious about acting. And his very first agent looks at his name, Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio, and says, nope.
No.
Pretty much. Too long, apparently. Too complicated. And the killer phrase, non-commercial.
Non-commercial. Wow.
Yeah. And the fix, a total rebrand. Quick and clean.
And the name they came up with.
Yeah.
You have to hear this. Lenny Williams.
Lenny Williams.
Just let that sink in for a second. The Wolf of Wall Street, starring Lenny Williams.
It doesn't quite have the same ring, does it?
Not at all. Or, Titanic. Introducing the world to Jack Dawson, played by Lenny Williams. It just feels, flat. Lacks that weight.
Completely. It makes him sound anonymous, which, interestingly, as we'll get into, was often the whole point for the old studio system for, decades.
Wow.
The name Williams, apparently, was sort of loosely pulled from his middle name, Wilhelm, anglicized. But the goal was a complete transformation.
So the mission for us today in this deep dive is to use this one anecdote, which is kind of amazing that it's not more widely known, to really explore this long-running, pretty brutal Hollywood bias. This clash between, who you actually are, your identity, and what the industry thinks is marketable.
Exactly. We're looking at the price of fame, really, and what that phrase too ethnic, which was apparently used.
Yeah, that's the phrase.
What that tells us about the gatekeepers in the industry back then and maybe even, a little bit today.
Okay, so let's start right there with that specific moment. What was the explicit reason the agent gave him for needing the change?
Well, the problem, as the agent defined it, was that his Italian surname, DiCaprio, sounded too ethnic.
Wow, just said it outright.
Just like that. And that phrase, it's pretty loaded, right? It clearly signals the agent believed that having a non-Anglo background, or at least a name that sounded like it, was a major hurdle.
A barrier to mainstream appeal.
Precisely. The implication was that casting directors, especially for those big, broad, mass-market type roles, just wouldn't give a kid named Leonardo DiCaprio a serious look.
It's kind of chilling, hearing that language directed at a kid. It makes you wonder, was the agent just being, cruel? Or were they trying to give what they saw as practical advice?
Oh, I think it was almost certainly meant as practical advice, based on the reality of Hollywood in the 80s.
Which was pretty biased.
Right, deeply biased, yeah. The agent was probably thinking they were helping him navigate a flawed system, a system geared towards certain, usually white Anglo-Saxon identities.
Right.
But DiCaprio, even as a kid, apparently pushed back a bit. He was just confused. He basically asked, what do you mean it's Leonardo DiCaprio? Why is my name a problem?
He didn't get why his identity was suddenly a negative.
Exactly. He didn't grasp that it was being framed as this obstacle.
And that moment of confusion, that little pushback, it sets up the real turning point in the story, doesn't it? Because the person who really dug in their heels wasn't Leo himself.
No, it was his father, George DiCaprio.
Tell us about that. That seems critical.
Oh, it's absolutely the pivot point. The sources really emphasize how firm George DiCaprio was. He completely rejected the name change.
Just flat out refused.
Flat out insisted that his son's authenticity, his real name, was way more important than getting some quick compromise shot at fame. There are even accounts saying he physically tore up the headshot that had Lenny Williams on it. Right there.
Wow. Okay, that's a statement.
It really is. That kind of parental backing, defending the full name Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio against what was probably presented as essential career advice. That's huge.
It really is. It basically saved him from being erased right at the start. And it highlights something specific, too. The agent didn't just pick a random name, Williams.
Yeah, taking Wilhelm and sort of sanitizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stripping away anything that sounded, I guess, complex or foreign. It feels very targeted.
It's an act of identity trimming, for sure. And this kind of pressure, it wasn't just Leo. The source material mentions other actors from his generation face similar things.
Like who?
Well, Benicio del Toro, for example, he's spoken about feeling pressure early on to change or simplify his name, again, to fit that mold the industry seemed to want.
Right, so this wasn't just one weird agent encounter. This was a thing.
Oh, absolutely. It connects directly to a much larger, older Hollywood tradition.
Right.
What DiCaprio experienced was basically a late echo of something systemic.
The tradition of erasure, essentially.
Exactly that. For a huge chunk of the 20th century, especially during the peak studio system era, anglicizing your name wasn't just suggested, it was practically mandatory for many.
Why, though? What was the logic?
It boiled down to economics, really. A pretty cynical view that names sounding foreign or ethnic or just too difficult
Would turn off the mainstream audience.
Right. The big middle American audience they saw as crucial. So to be universally marketable, you had to be simplified, usually meaning you had to sound white Anglo-Saxon.
And the examples are legendary, aren't they? When you start looking, they're everywhere. We could probably remind listeners of a few big ones.
Definitely. It drives the point home. Think about Ramon Estevez.
Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen, a phenomenal actor, pushed to adopt that name because of fears his Spanish heritage would limit him.
Okay, another one. How about Margarita Cancino?
Rita Hayworth, one of the biggest bombshells, a global icon. But she had to shed her Latina identity completely. The studios manufactured Rita Hayworth.
It's wild. And maybe the most famous, or saddest, Frances Gump.
Judy Garland. Incredible talent forced into that new persona. In all these cases, the goal was the same: uniformity.
Create a brand that felt universal.
Even if it meant asking the performer to basically ditch their personal history, their identity, for an industry-approved one. DiCaprio's agent, just running the old playbook.
Okay, so that's the history. Let's bring it forward. What are the implications now? This core conflict, identity versus marketability. How does that play out for young actors today?
Well, that's the thing. The pressure might be less overt now, maybe, but the fundamental choice can still be there. It's this brutal question. Do I change a part of myself, my name, just to get my foot in the door?
And for every DiCaprio who had someone fight for them.
Right. For every Leo whose dad stepped in, you have to assume there are countless others who just quietly comply. They shorten their name, tweak the spelling, pick a stage name.
Just to make things easier. Avoid friction.
Exactly. To smooth that path, make the audition process feel less complicated.
And that phrase, too ethnic. Even if agents aren't saying it quite like that anymore.
The bias it represents might still be lingering, yeah. It's coded language.
How so?
Well, when a name gets flagged as having friction or being difficult to market, it often signals a preference for what the industry still sees as neutral.
And neutral usually means?
Historically, and often still subtly today, it means Anglo-Saxon. It's this unspoken idea that whiteness and simplicity equal universality. That bias hasn't vanished, even if it's shifted. Maybe now it's framed as, needing names that are easier to pronounce globally or simpler for branding. Less direct, maybe, but the underlying preference can still be there.
Okay, but let's pivot to the outcome here, which is fascinating. The sources suggest something counterintuitive. Maybe Leonardo DiCaprio, the very name they wanted to ditch. Maybe his distinctiveness actually became a massive asset for him. Not a liability at all.
That's a really key insight, I think. Consider celebrity branding. Your name is your core trademark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lenny Williams is fine, but it's one of potentially thousands of similar sounding names on a casting sheet. It blends in, it's forgettable.
No punch.
Right. No history, no memorability baked in. But Leonardo DiCaprio...
Different, it stands out, it sounds significant.
Exactly. It's unique, it has a certain grandeur maybe, it makes you pay attention. And then, crucially, once he started delivering these amazing performances...
The name got linked to the talent.
Inextricably linked to stardom, to quality, and, yeah, ironically, to a sense of authenticity, the very thing his dad fought for.
So he kept his name. And that uniqueness helped build one of the most powerful personal brands on earth.
It's a pretty compelling argument that resisting that pressure to conform sometimes, that's the best branding move you can make.
Okay, that tees up the final piece perfectly. The status of this bias today. Because things have changed, right? The whole landscape of entertainment is different.
Massively different. The economics have shifted under Hollywood's feet. That old rationale for anglicizing names worrying about the middle American audience.
It's kind of collapsing, isn't it?
It is, largely because the audience isn't just middle America anymore, it's global.
Right, streaming platforms, international box office.
Exactly. Our sources point out that the global market is huge now. For a big movie, international audiences might bring in more money than the US does.
So if you're trying to appeal to audiences in, say, Asia or Latin America or Europe.
Does the name Lenny Williams have any special advantage over Leonardo DiCaprio or Timothy Chalamet or Keanu Reeves? Probably not.
If anything, the unique name might be more intriguing globally.
That's the shift. Distinctiveness is becoming an asset. In this incredibly crowded digital world, a unique name isn't just memorable.
It's good for SEO.
Yeah, that too. But it also generates curiosity. It connects potentially more strongly with diverse global audiences who might actually value that hint of specific cultural background.
So the very thing the agent feared back in the 80s, that distinctiveness.
It's increasingly looking like a competitive advantage, a marker of global appeal, not a barrier to it.
So the industry is slowly, maybe reluctantly, learning that the fear of the too ethnic name wasn't just biased. It was bad business.
It was economically short-sighted, yeah. The bias isn't totally gone, let's be clear. But the market forces are pushing back against it.
The old model was conformity.
Conformity driven by perceived scarcity. The new model, with endless content on global platforms, it seems to reward uniqueness, authenticity. The distinct name is arguably easier to market worldwide than the deliberately bland one.
That really brings us full circle. What we've dug into today isn't just some old Hollywood story. It's a powerful case study in, branding, identity, resilience.
Absolutely. Leonardo DiCaprio almost became Lenny Williams. It shows how often that path to success seems to start with intense pressure to compromise who you fundamentally are.
And the key takeaway, the hinge point, was resistance.
Totally. That crucial support in his case from his father protecting his authenticity when he was maybe too young or didn't have the power to do it himself. He stayed Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio and built this monumental brand.
So for you, the listener, thinking about this, it raises a final question, maybe a provocative thought that goes beyond just Hollywood. If this new global marketplace in entertainment and maybe elsewhere is starting to reward authenticity and distinctiveness over blending in, what does that mean for how we define marketability going forward? Not just for actors, but for entrepreneurs, artists, leaders, anyone building a presence.
Yeah, that's a great question. If the old competitive edge was about fitting in, what happens if the new edge is actually standing out, being unapologetically distinct?
Think about your own world, your own field. Is there some part of your unique identity, your name, your background, your perspective, that you feel pressure to downplay?
And what if that very thing holds unexpected value in this interconnected world? Maybe the price of entry isn't compromise anymore. Maybe it's the courage to stay fully authentically yourself.